All right, Mech Warriors, in this Battletech Tactica vlog, we're jumping in with the Hermes. We've been exploring some different light mechs, asking the question, this is the primary role that they follow. But based on the loadout, maybe speed or weapons configuration, are they also suited for a secondary role? And with this secondary role, if we can do it successfully, not only are we fulfilling a role for the Lance, but we're also saving on battle value. Because light mechs, by the very nature of their tonnage limitation, they'll cost less with battle value. And depending on the size of the game, we can pump that into mediums, heavies, and assaults. Now, the primary role of a light mech is recon, is some light support, is some skirmishing. The speed and the distance, for the most part, keep the machine alive. You really don't have enough armor to take any hits. Maybe you could take one or two from some light or medium weapons, but if you get blasted by a long-range missile 20-pack, or you get hit by a PPC or an autocannon 10, there's going to be some pretty significant effects. Likewise, for the most part, your damage output is limited. You've got one primary weapon, often a medium laser, and maybe some secondary weapons like a short-range missile 2-pack, some machine guns, maybe some small lasers, maybe a secondary medium laser, or a long-range missile 5-pack. Now, within that framework, of course, Battletech being Battletech and Mech Command being Mech Command, you do have some light mechs that break out of that role, that mount something very, very specific, what we usually see on medium mechs, something like a PPC or a long-range missile 10-pack. This idea of kind of breaking the mold of a light mech, putting on something different and utilizing it in a different tactica. Those fulfill a completely different role. So we've kind of got that 80-20 rule. 80% of the light mechs go into this category, 20% go into the second category. Where does the Hermes fit in? Now, the first thing we see, Hermes is pretty fast. It's got some good speed. We're going to utilize that. It's got light armor. Now, of course, I'd always like a lot of armor for the weight class. I mean, a light mech is never going to be a medium mech, but if I have a light mech, I'd like some more armor as much as possible piled on because it gives me a little bit of room if I make a mistake. Hermes, for its tonnage and size, is a little bit lighter on the armor. Okay, but it's still a light mech. So what offsets that? What we see, of course, is the speed, but the weapons loadout. Now we've got two. This is the stock Hermes, two medium lasers and a flamer. Now that's kind of interesting because most mechs across the entire spectrum, they really don't carry flamers. We're going to get to the fire starter in a second because the fire starter is really kind of the critical question to the Hermes. And it's also a pretty potent light mech. Usually don't see flamers. So the fact that the flamer is on this mech as a secondary weapon, if we're taking the Hermes, we want to utilize it. Now, maybe you take this game because you're playing a role-playing session, or there's salvage, or you're playing C-bills, and randomly the only mech that's available to fill your light lance is a Hermes. Right, you'll take it for that. But generally, if we're playing Battletech where you've got, 3, 4, 5K battle value and you can buy stuff, I'm taking the Hermes to utilize that flamer. Now, in terms of the weapon loadouts, medium lasers are the primary weapons for light mechs. They've got good damage, they've got good range, they've got okay heat management. They're solid. I mean, they're solid across all weight classes and mechs. Probably if you look at all the mechs, if we could crunch it, medium lasers are the number one weapon that you're going to find across all mechs. So we see that as a primary weapon. The Hermes has two of these. I like that. I like this idea in Battletech of redundancy. If I have one weapon, I only get one chance to hit you. And of course, there's modifiers up and down and how fast did you move and what kind of terrain and did I run? What's the range? Whatever number I'm rolling, and of course, I want to try and keep that number low. If I'm firing two or more of the same weapon, that increases my chances to hit and cause damage. So the fact that we have two, that's interesting. That's got a little bit of push. But the locations of the weapons, including the flamer, they make me ponder a little bit. So you've got a flamer in the arm, you've got a medium laser in the arm. You've got a primary weapon in the arm and a secondary weapon in the arm. The arms on any mech are the lightest armored, they're going to get blown off first with the Hermes. So you're going to lose that flamer. You're going to lose that medium laser really, really fast. And then I'm going to be left with just one medium laser. Okay, well, like a Locust could get its arms blown off and lose those weapons. Other mechs can. Yes, absolutely, they could. I mean, it's better than some of the mechs that have their primary weapon just in the arm. Having a medium laser in that center torso does give the Hermes a little bit more survivability. It's a zombie mech. And on a side note, a zombie mech in Battletech are mechs that have most of their weapons, some of their weapons, or one or two weapons in their center torso, or perhaps left torso and right torso. This idea that if both arms get blown off, you've still got a lot of bite. You've still got a lot of power, and they've got to chew through the left torso, the right torso, the center torso. The idea is you've really got to put that mech down, as opposed to, I love the longbow, so I'm not cracking on the longbow, but the longbow has the primary weapons of those long-range missile 20 packs in the arms. And even as a heavier mech with good armor, it's going to take damage. You lose an arm, that immediately cuts down the potential of the longbow. A zombie mech, you blow off the weapons on the arms, even if they have them. The fact that they have other weapons in the center torso or the left and right torso means they're going to continue to put down that pain and punishment. A good kind of entry point zombie mech would be looking at something like the Awesome. So back to the Hermes. But this is a light mech. And look, if I've got my arms blown off and I've got my left torso smoking, you're going to get cored out in a hit and fold faster. We're not talking about all those internal bubbles like a heavy or an assault would have. It's still okay placement, but now what I'm looking and saying, well, if I want the survivability of the weapons, then because perhaps it's a lower battle value game and I'm not going to be soaking 2 or 3 PPC shots a turn, it's going to be more of lighter weapons or light tanks, light vehicles, maybe a couple of light mechs. I could look at the Spider and get a much better mech. Now, utilizing that flamer, I could take a fire starter. It's like if I'm going to take the flamer and use that and make that my core tactica, then perhaps I'm just better off taking a fire starter, paying the battle value for that. Side note, fire starter, push that up to the Battletech playlist here. Firestarter is an interesting mech, not only for the lulls, but the weapons on it and its configuration. You get into a lot of trouble fast because it wants to play like a medium mech with the weapons that it can put out. And again, you can check that out on the Battletech playlist here on my channel. You get into trouble because you're zapping around and you're engaging medium mechs because you're like, hey man, I've got the firepower to deal with this. Then you realize you're only a sad-faced light mech and get trashed. So just on the weapons alone, it's kind of like, well, I could take a dedicated fire starter in that 20% roll and do better, or I could take a Spider and live longer and be better. So where does the Hermes fit in? I'm going to switch the Hermes. If I'm taking the Hermes, I'm going to make that flamer primary. I'm going to look to use the speed to where can I cause as much trouble as possible with that flamer. Burning down woods, possibly burning out infantry, engaging stuff that if it's terrain that can be destroyed, if we're playing with those optional rules from Total Warfare, what can I burn? The medium lasers are not to engage. The primary focus is the flamer burning things, and the medium lasers I'm going to use to drive off other things trying to stop me. So I've got my lance moving forward, and there's some forests on the left that I just want to burn out. Maybe we're playing with the cover rule. Maybe I just want to burn it out and prevent my opponent from using it as an anchor point. I move up there, I start burning stuff. You pull off your light mech to try and drive me away to skirmish. I'm going to use those medium lasers to pounce back, to drive off your light mech. So from that perspective, the Hermes engaging other light mechs and pushing them away, or light hovers or light vehicles, pushing them away while I'm burning, that's kind of the role I see it in. But if I'm taking this mech, I want to use the flamer. But I ask the question, am I better off taking a fire starter, or am I better off taking a Spider? Final end note before I turn it over to my fellow mech commanders and mech warriors, because a mech is a mech and better than no mech. The Hermes is kind of good for a long campaign. I have taken a few of them when I'm playing like 10 or 15 long game campaign with no resupply, no restock. We're going to have some ammo, but ammo bleeds and runs dry very, very fast. The Hermes has no ammunition, nothing to run, complete energy, pulls the heat for the flamer from the fusion reactor, ready to go from that perspective. So for that, it has possible play advantages depending on the mission if you're playing part of a campaign. So here's what I'm curious, opening it up to the comments. Mech commanders, how do you deploy a Hermes? How do you utilize it? And out there in Battletech land, are there any dedicated mech warriors where you regularly play this mech? This is your machine. This is your mech. How do you play it? How do you utilize it?